Morning everyone, welcome on International Women's Day. We'll say that, that's all I'm saying. To the Environment Overview and Scrutiny Committee for the Tuesday 8th of March 2022. We're not expecting any fire alarms, and please can I just say, can you turn your phone to silent? Thank you. So we'll start the agenda. Agenda item 1, comments from members of the public. Amy, do we have any?
We haven't received any comments from members of the public, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item 2, any apologies for absence?
We haven't received any apologies for absence. However, just to note that John Cottier has not arrived yet. Thank you.
Thank you. Number 3, any disclosure of interests? Members are asked to disclose any interests in matters for consideration at the meeting today.
I don't know if it is for declaration, but for avoidance of doubt, I have attended meetings of Friends of Jubilee Park.
Thank you, Councillor Baxter. That is noted. Agenda item 4, action notes from the meeting held on the 30th of November 2021. Everyone read and happy with them? If so, we'll move on. Oh, Councillor Diks.
Sorry, Madam Chairman. Yes, thank you. I just, presumably we're talking about the accuracy of them as well. Page 11, you remember that when we were talking about green flags, I pointed out that actually South Kesteven in the past year had increased the number of green flags from 1 to 2, and that in contrast, Nottingham City, for example, had got 68 green flags. I was clearly making the point that, you know, of comparison there, but I know that the only line that gets in from that conversation was one member noted that the number of green flag status parks in South Kesteven had doubled in the past year, which I've got to say is, well, pretty unbelievable, but there we are. So I just sort of point that out, Madam Chairman, and I'm not sure how we deal with it, but yeah.
Amy, can I have some advice here? Can we?
Yeah, I'm happy to rectify that in the minutes, and yeah, we'll notify you once that's been done. No worries.
Thank you very much. We don't have to vote on these, so any other comments? No, lovely. Updates from previous meeting and agenda item 5. So I think actually that what is listed we're actually dealing with today within the agenda. So we'll kind of go through them as we get there, if that's okay. Councillor Diks.
I just wonder if I might ask Councillor Reed, our cabinet member, spoke about flooding, the flooding update, and mentioned last time about that parishes, he was going to do a reminder out that these sandbags were available. I just wonder if there was an update there, and if there'd been a better uptake, Robert. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Councillor Reed, are you happy to answer?
Yeah, good morning, Chairman. Hello. Yes, there is an update. We have been working with the County Council as to a better memorandum of understanding between the district councils and the County Council, and an agreement made. Quite separately, I've been working over the last 3 months with Phil Swinton to see that particularly in the event of flash floods where they happen, where we get these torrential downpours, that each parish has been contacted. They have been made aware of the communications to try and improve when these sad situations occur, who knows what, who does what, and who helps who, rather than everybody bombarding fire and rescue because of flooding situations. So we have been in consultation with all parishes. Sadly, not all of them have responded. Some of them have taken up, 9 of them have taken up the initiative of 200 sandbags to be stored. Most importantly, each parish, through its correspondence and its protocol at parish councils in correspondence, have all had an emergency contact update protocol. I hope you find that useful.
Thank you, Councillor Reed. Councillor Diks?
Yes, thanks for that, Councillor Reed. I think that is no progress then, because I think it was 9 that you reported last time. Sadly, you know, I don't think that one more is very good. I did take it back to my parish council, and from what you've just said on the numbers, it sounds as if mine hasn't responded either, which is disappointing. I'll give them another nudge. Presumably that offer is still there to parish councils if they come forward. I wonder if I might just sort of move on to the top of recycling. I'm just looking for where it is, and I've done myself a note at the top of page 9, but I can't see it on page 9. But it was about the Councillor Reed gave us an update about a high-level meeting that you'd taken part in regarding the possibility of a new recycling centre to serve Stamford and Deepings. And I just wondered if there was any progress on that. I think the meeting had just taken place a few days before our last meeting.
Councillor Reed?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I remember the meeting now. The meeting was one that was held at Bourne Amenity Centre, and there is no plans, as I know of at this moment, for any recycling facility in Stamford, or indeed nearer to help the Deepings. However, since waste is under the portfolio holder of Councillor Mark Whittington, he might know something more of an update than I can actually furnish you with.
Thank you. Can I ask Councillor Whittington if he has any update, please?
I haven't, unfortunately. It's the first time I've been aware of this, but I will look into it and get back. I'll, if necessary, I'll send a written email out to all the members of the committee, but I'll certainly look into it. Madam Chairman, thank you.
Thank you for that. I do know that members have taken on different roles, and I know that we're also having a change currently with them officers as well. So if the committee can kind of bear with us while we kind of fall into place, that'd be great. Councillor Baxter, sorry.
Thank you. In the action notes, point 41, work programme, members requested that the following items be added to the work programme. Number 3, progress update on the depot project.
Yes, we are going to be discussing that at the next meeting in May, when we've got a bit more information around that. So that is kind of scheduled for our May meeting. Councillor Reed?
I can give a sort of semi-update. We are at stage 2 in the process where the depot is concerned. I think first, foremost, and most importantly, where we need to be with a new depot, yes, it is certainly required for the expanding district, particularly the growth in Grantham, our frontline services for refuge services. However, it has to be a project which is affordable, and we can deliver within the realms of financing. Now, everybody has heard me speak on several times about asset management, and in fact, liquidating some assets to actually balance part of the costing for the property acquisition and the realisation of it. At stage 2, there is several checks and balances with minds and requirements in process to make sure that we build what we require, but only what we require. And for example, Housing are looking at whether they really would need a facility and how much of a facility they would need for our repairs and improvements depot that we have on Alexandra Road, because working practices have very much changed, and contractual and subcontracts often mean that we don't need hardware warehouses and things such as that. So that's in my portfolio, but there is in other portfolios the initiative of looking at what we're going to deliver at the most prudent of costs. We all know that the acquisition of the land and whatever is at 2 million, and we are working, I am particularly working with Councillor Adam Stokes and indeed Richard on where we're moving forward. There is another board meeting agended for the end of March, and so timely for your meeting in May, we will be able to discuss more with you, but I felt that that's probably a good way of being open, transparent, and indeed informing all members of where we are at this point. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Councillor Reed, for that. Councillor Baxter?
Thank you, Chairman. I thank Councillor Reed for his candour. Towards the end, you mentioned a board meeting. Which board is that?
It might not be a board meeting. It might be it is a board meeting. It's the officer working group that we have meetings with on the project board. There's a project management. It's not actually a board, but that's what it is, and it involves a consortium between finance, myself, where property hat's concerned. It did include Peter Mosley, and it will now include Mark Whittington, Councillor Mark Whittington, and the officers who are obviously working with the consultants as well that are involved in the delivery. Using the word consultants is, to me, one that we need to be careful of the brief that consultants are given to evaluate. And that's where I come from about being careful about what we're going to deliver and what's actually needed, rather than what's aspirational, and how we may need to make sure it's in the parameters of what we can afford. I.e., there has been some thought of some office accommodation, and while we're building, we could build extra stories. But, you know, there are various things that when people bring these ideas, one should be open-minded and evaluate them, but it does come back to the main criteria of first primary purpose and costs as well. Okay.
Thank you for that clarification, Councillor Reed. So if we're all happy with the action notes, we shall move on to agenda item 5. Oh no, we've done that. Beg your pardon. That's what we've just done. Agenda item 6, the update on the green flag status at council parks. And I believe Paul Stokes is presenting this report, or am I misguided? Councillor Reed.
Apparently. According to the leader, he thinks that it comes under parks, and that's a different portfolio holder. That's Rosemary Tollett Blue, but I've always dealt with it. So I'll continue at this point. I'm pleased to receive the considerations and requirements to attain green flag status for additional parts in the district, as we spoke about on the 30th of November. In regard to Jubilee Park in Deeping St James, we're able to offer advice and guidance to the friends of Jubilee Park towards developing details for the future green flag application. I will actually come back to that again in a moment. It's expected that Jubilee Park may also require some park improvements to be in good stead for green flag award, and this needs to be carefully assessed and budgeted for. We offer guidance and support to parish and town councils should they wish to pursue green flags status for any public park. However, as a council, we do not have the resources to directly lead to the process. And that's why I wanted to come back to it. We would be happy to assist and support, particularly with the Jubilee Park, and transfer the land should they wish to take the onus on to get green flag status. It is really to do with, and similarly, it's down to ambition. I think we also have further dialogue in Grantham where Dysart Park is concerned, but you know, it's down to funding, budgets, and these are not statutory requirements, and we have set a budget, and it has been cautionary around green flag status and public park expenditure. So I think that's really what I have to report. Perhaps not what I'd like to report, Chairman, from the heart, but it's what the head and what the guidance of the District Council and where we are at present. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments? Councillor Baxter.
Yes, thank you for the report, and thank you for what you've said. Some of it doesn't make sense, but what I want to say about this, first of all, is that on Friday I phoned, or maybe sometime last week, I phoned Mr. Frisbee, the park project officer who wrote the report, and asked had he contacted Friends of Jubilee Park, as they are referenced maybe 5 or 6 times in paragraph 1.4, and the report reads as if this is going to be a partnership with Friends of Jubilee Park in order to deliver a green flag status if one is wanted or needed. And I was very surprised that nobody has contacted Friends of Jubilee Park at all. I was further surprised when I went to a meeting of Friends of Jubilee Park, the first one for some time, last night, and I spoke to the Friends of Jubilee Park, and the meeting included myself and another local ward councillor. I'm not the councillor for Deep and St James, but there was another ward councillor for Deep and St James in that meeting, and 2, if not 3 parish councillors, and nobody had contacted them either. Nobody came back to me. I mean, I think I was the person who put this on the agenda in the first place. Nobody's come back to me about my aspirations or the community aspirations for green flag status. And I think it's unhelpful when these reports are written in ivory towers in Grantham, rather than through communication and consultation with the people who are actually, from the read of this report, expected to do the actual work. Happily, the Friends of Jubilee Park didn't take offence and were supportive of the aspiration for a green flag status, but they pointed out several reasons why the plan that's written down on page 16 in paragraph 1.4 is impractical. First of all, it involves the Friends of Jubilee Park creating a management and maintenance plan. Well, the management and maintenance of Jubilee Park is almost entirely within the scope of South Kesteven District Council. They cut the grass, they maintain the play equipment, they have led the rewilding or nature area or whatever you want to call it. And furthermore, South Kesteven District Council empty the bins. The only part of the maintenance and management that SKDC is not responsible for is the daily inspections and the litter pick, which is done by the parish council. The parish council also has not been contacted whatsoever about this green flag question, as far as I understand. And so, without speaking to anybody else involved in the management of the park, it just seems a bit rum. And on top of that, the bits that the Friends of Jubilee Park do are the community activities. So the Friends of Jubilee Park exists for the betterment of the park and its community. And they put on a dog show, they put on carols in the park. There are other events that are put on by the parish council in the park. But they're a small community group, a tight community group, but they don't have the resources or the budget to for example, mow the grass. SKDC has the mowing of the grass, and as far as I know, nobody's complaining on a regular basis. But if Jubilee Park Friends decide that they want a maintenance regime that involves mowing the grass every month, and SKDC can only do it every 9 weeks, then Jubilee Park Friends have got no control over that whatsoever. Therefore, it has to be a partnership, and a partnership requires communication. I think that Friends of Jubilee Park would be pleased to hear from anyone at SKDC, but they can't be ultimately responsible for the maintenance and management of the park. So that's where we've got to. And like, we welcome guidance and ad hoc and everything else, but using budget as an expense is a poppycock, because when you look at the items in 1.7, the performance measures, we're already performing as a council, as a parish council, and as a Friends of Jubilee Park. Most of these issues, we're doing really well on it. And so it's more a case of filling in the form and ticking the boxes and paying the £339 fee, which I don't think is beyond the budget of SKDC, to apply for the green flag status and to get it. They've already got a flagpole, which was at the expense of a resident of Deeping St James, so that's not cost the public purse anything at all. So we've got somewhere to fly the flag. What we need is some leadership from South Kesteven District Council to help us through the process of getting the flag. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Reed, would you like to comment?
Oh, yes, I would. First of all, I don't like what your accusation about what I've said doesn't make sense. But that's your interpretation, Councillor Baxter, and obviously not mine. Ivory Tower. Yeah, okay, you want to call this office an Ivory Tower, do so. For me, it is a place where we communicate between what happens in offices in the district council and what happens by the community that we represent. Obviously, your ideas are a bit different from mine. And poppycock, for goodness sake, let's just keep to constructive dialogue, shall we? Because it would help. And having sort of addressed the behavioural phraseology that seems to be taking place this morning, Chairman, my head of corporate operations will now attend to more of the finer detail to do with what is constructive. And don't smile at me.
Can I just interrupt here and just kind of say, can we just be nice? This is what we're trying to do. We're trying to make a discussion and make things happen. This is not an environment where we can be rude to each other. I will not tolerate it. I did let a few things go, but now I've said that, just be kind to each other. Thank you. Sorry, Paul Stone.
Thank you. I think in terms of the report that Steve has crafted and I've reviewed, we were asked to lay out the requirements of should the council proceed towards green flag at Jubilee Park. There would be no communication at this stage as such, because the council hasn't decided to go for green flag at Jubilee Park. The corporate plan was quite clear that it would be Wyndham Park, QE, Dysart Park in 22. And then to look at other parks beyond that, but no park was done. So the report was to highlight what would be required. As much as we've been through green flag and the application for Dysart Park this year, I can tell you that there's a lot more to it than cutting the grass. They will expect footpaths and all the surrounding accesses, everything that goes around the park to be in first class condition. It's not just a case the council, when it first put an application in Wyndham Park, failed in the very first year. Yes, we've had it for 10 years running, but I cannot underestimate the management and maintenance plan, and they are quite clear in looking for partnership working. So yes, the Friends of Jubilee Park would be very, very important. There's no doubt about that. But Steve hasn't got that instruction at this stage to make that connection, because the council hasn't committed, as Councillor Reed said, through the budget process to go for that. it is important because there is more to it than cutting the grass. The cutting the grass actually is still quite expensive, but to actually pass the inspection, so Steve tried to list out the processes in 1.4, and it showed very clearly that the very earliest would be 2023. But again, to do that, we do need that commitment. We are fully stretched with the resource we've got already, and Steve Frisbee only works part-time. So to commit to another part would involve a financial commitment and resource to support that park.
Thank you for that. Any other comments? Councillor Diks.
Yes, thanks, Madam Chairman. I'll try and be nice, as usual. First of all, I'd like to thank Councillor Baxter for bringing the agenda item in the first place, which actually came to the last meeting, of course. And I would also welcome this report as being more positive than the report that we had last time about the idea of Jubilee Park getting a green flag. The report we had last time was frankly negative and actually said that Jubilee Park wouldn't actually qualify because it wasn't a public park or something like that. But anyway, it's an open space, and as I pointed out last time, you've only got to look up the rules on the website and it tells you what qualifies, and it would qualify providing it has this management plan that Mr. Stokes has alluded to. But I am a bit disappointed, I've got to say, as a council, that we've spent 10 years getting green flags for one park. That's great, and that we're going to, and this was the point I was making last time. We're going to try. We've just doubled it, and we've now got 2, both in Grantham, and we're trying to get a third one also in Grantham. And we had that discussion as to why and the special areas of special responsibility. And I accept all that, but the fact is, it's taken a council to sort of bring the suggestion of, let's look at one extra park, i.e. in our area, in Deacon St James. But there's parks in Bourne and Stamford. And whilst I accept that there is a cost to this, I accept that, of course, and we have to be wary of that. But we do say in the report that, we're aspirational and we're looking towards, improving things and doing a bit better on the green flags. And it also says that, we offer support to parishes, but we don't have the resources. I accept that. And that leads to my question, which other parishes are we not communicating with? Or sorry, we are communicating with. Which ones, are we? Is that just words or is it real action? Are we sort of doing that? I would suspect that we're probably not, because what Mr. Stokes has said, that resources are stretched, and it's a stretch to actually go for a third green flag next year, and I go back to, I accept all those things that are said about the cost and but we do say in the report that we welcome, and we encourage the concept of green flags to bring, a bit, that they are, worth having. I think it's more or less saying. But I still go back to Nottingham and say Nottingham City Council hasn't just got 1 or 2, it's got 60. Now, obviously, that's a city. I accept all that. But I just think we're not actually being that aspirational and that ambitious in what we're actually trying to do. And I just wonder if we can do a bit better. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I just ask one question? Am I right in thinking that the one that Ashley was talking about, Jubilee Park, is owned by the South Kesteven District Council and not? Yeah, okay, that's fine. I'd just like to say that Stamford's going forward with a green flag, and up to now we've been doing it for 2 years. It is not an easy thing to get. It really is not easy. They are very, very particular at giving these green flags. And I'd like to know how Nottingham's managed to do all that on their budget. And would it be possible, Phil, for you to find out how they've done it? so that we can then perhaps follow their lead and see how they've done it. Because 68 parks is a lot of parks in one city, right? And to get the green flag for all them, they must be superhuman. So consequently, we have been at it for 2 years. This year we're painting the bandstand and what have you. And hopefully this year we might actually be able to apply for it. As I say, it is not easy. Okay.
Thank you for that. Any further comments? I'd just like to say, I'm going to comment first. Thank you, Vice Chair. I'd just like to kind of say, because it's connected with the corporate plan that we kind of work within the council, I know it's quoted in the report, if I may. It says, maintain and enhance our green areas across the district, aiming to secure green flag status for Queen Elizabeth Park, Dysart Park and other relevant areas. I know it says that. I do find the budget is always going to come up, and I'm not saying that that should be a restriction and why we shouldn't move forward and kind of aim higher. I agree with Councillor Diks there. I just feel we need to find a balance. And I think when we're pinpointing Jubilee Park, I do think that the report is written as if we haven't spoken to them, which at this process, as Mr. Stokes said, that that is the right thing to do. We are just seeing where we can go with this. I've lost my thought. So I do feel that we are a bit restricted with how we've kind of laid it out previously. So yes, this is a great discussion, and I do feel that it is the right time and the right place to have it. But I also feel that we've just sat through the budget at full council last week, and it's very tight. And I'm not saying that this should be prioritised over something else that we're cutting. And that's where we're up to with the budget. So, yes, I agree. But also I disagree that, that is this a priority currently? I don't know. I honestly don't know the answer. But I'll come back to Councillor Baxter.
Thank you. Just to pick up on a few things. I'm glad you pointed to 1.1 in the report, Chairman, because within the corporate plan, it mentions specifically across the district, maintain and enhance our green areas across the district, aiming to secure green flag status for 2 parks in Grantham and other relevant areas. The community has identified this as a place and a park, they call it a park, of significance and of well-being and so on, and it deserves to be considered alongside anywhere else in the district. And I think it's fabulous that Stamford Town Council have started on the journey. I suggested to Market Deeping Town Council probably 8 years ago that they should consider green flag status, and at the time they said no because of the cost of the application actually. So that's the first thing. I think that other areas of the district deserve to be part of our corporate objectives, our corporate plan, and we should start with Jubilee Park. Secondly, we're talking about the costs. Everyone keeps saying, oh, the cost is prohibitive, the cost is prohibitive. The only costs that are mentioned in this report are the cost of £339 plus VAT for the application. If cost is prohibitive, where does it tell us within this report why the cost is prohibitive? Because we're not cutting the grass in order to achieve the green status. We're cutting the grass because we need to cut the grass, and we're maintaining the park because we need to maintain the park for the betterment of our community. The green flag status is purely a symbol of, it's a kite mark, a quality mark of how well we are doing. And I think we are doing well. And so I don't think the cost should be so much. As I've said, the community is willing to work with the council. I mean, I do dispute that saying that we need to get permission from this committee before we can even phone the Friends of Jubilee Park is the right way of communication, because I can tell you that when an organisation like Friends of Jubilee Park or anywhere else, the first they hear of their involvement in this scheme is via a committee report, they feel left out, if that's the right expression. So anyway, I'd certainly like to recommend to propose for recommendations within the report, items 1 and 2. I hope that will find a seconder, and I hope that that will mean that future conversations can take place. It might be that there are some budget reasons that we haven't yet heard as to why it's impossible that we could get green flag status, but at least we can start on that journey in partnership with, first of all, the Parish Council, the Friends of Jubilee Park, and SKDC offering ad hoc guidance. Thank you.
Can I just come back and say that, you know, Mr. Stokes did just explain it's not just about cutting lawns. There's a lot more that goes into it. They assess the pathways, they assess accessibility for all. I said it's not just the 399. I think, okay, it's not documented, but I think we're all aware of what's been alluded to, that there's a lot more work. And my question is, who would take the lead? Is it your town council or your parish council? Is it the Friends of Jubilee Park? Are you expecting SK to take the lead? I'm a bit woolly of what you're asking at the minute, Councillor Baxter. Hold that thought. I think Councillor Westropp just wanted to come in. Thank you.
Yeah, just got a few points. I've been scribbling down as everyone's been talking. My first point, I appreciate Councillor Baxter, you weren't able to make the last meeting, but you are a member of this committee and also on the Friends of Jubilee Park. So I think that just if you are going to their meetings, then perhaps you could have mentioned that it was on the agenda, which is brilliant if you bring it, because that's great. But just to have it on the agenda so they were aware that we were talking about it. Perhaps it wasn't the first they'd heard about it. Anyway, that was just my thought on that. Just in terms of the corporate plan, obviously it runs till 2023. So we're going to have an option at some point coming up, I would imagine, to talk about that. And the parks that we've been working towards green flag status were in that plan, named in that plan, and that was what we were trying to deliver. Other relevant areas, I suspect, will then change to be named in the next plan. So I don't think anybody's saying no. I think just saying we've got a process to go through and it's going to take a little bit of time is what I understand from both this report and everything everybody said. So I think the argument isn't that we can't do it. We just need to go through the hoops and make sure the right people are consulted, but we have to go through this bit first. In terms of the budget, I think we have to cut, as Nick just said, we have to cut our cloth accordingly and make sure that the right things are being delivered. So if it is that it's going to take budget in order to make sure that all the right things are done, we're going to have to lose something else somewhere. I appreciate it's not in the report, but that will probably come next, the actual spend, but you've still got people to think about and all the steps to have to go through. So if we're going to have to put our resource somewhere, we're going to have to lose it from somewhere else. And that, obviously, that consideration has to happen at some point. So, I fully support doing this and making sure that we're increasing the number of green flag status parks and open spaces across our district. But we can't get there any faster. As Councillor Johnson's already said, the things have to be done in order to achieve that. And if it's taken 2 years in Stamford, we should be supporting the areas that want to do it. So I don't see why we're arguing about it, in short.
Thanks, Councillor Westropp. Councillor Baxter, did you want to come back?
Yes, I think what's frustrating me most is that we're being told that the park, I don't know if it says in here, but that lots of things will need to be done to the park in order for it to pass, but it doesn't say anywhere what those things are, nor how much they will cost, nor who has identified them. I think that item 2 of the recommendations that Councillor Reed's report suggests, item 2 says that by starting the process of a dialogue, at least, between the council, the parish council and the Friends of Jubilee Park, would at least, it might be that they get to the first meeting. I mean, I've read it, this won't happen, but it might be if they get to the first meeting and think, well, this is impossible, let's knock it on the head. But until we've actually, recommendation 1 says, talk about the potential ambition. There is an ambition already there. There's nothing potential about the ambition. We have in our corporate plan an ambition to attain green flag status against eligible sites, which it is. I agree with Councillor Westropp. I don't know what we're arguing about. I think we should just. Neither do I. So I propose recommendations 1 and 2 and hope that I'll find a seconder and support.
Do we have a seconder as we have a proposal? Councillor Diks. Can we go to the vote? But before we do that, just 1 second, just point of order. It does list in 1.7, Councillor Baxter, lots of things that the park will have to achieve. Am I wrong in understanding that this is to meet the green flag status? Can I just have some clarity? I just thought that's what it was all there. Health and safety and secure. The section looks how it's all there. So within the cost, you can imagine that all these points would kind of cost something. That's all I was trying to clarify, really. Councillor Diks.
Yeah, thanks. But it is this point, and at some point we're going to need to know how much it will cost, because it does say, and I'm at point 1.4, the bottom paragraph there, which says there is potential for park improvements to be required. Well, it doesn't say that they are going to be required. Because there are footpaths. There is a footpath across that particular park in order to achieve the standard, and budget would need allocating. Well, of course it would, I accept that. But at some point, I would like to have had an indicative figure now as to how much this might cost overall. And then we can look and see, how can we budget it? Or can we get a sponsor? Or, would the Deepings United Charities want to put some money in? That sort of thing, as to whether or not it's worth pursuing. And I just congratulate Stamford on what they're doing, to crack on themselves with a thing. It's just, I just think this whole thing has been a good debate and is welcome. And, I just want something to happen,
Okay, we have a proposer and a seconder. Shall we go to the vote? All those in favour, can we vote? Thank you. We shall move now to agenda item 7, the update on water refill stations. Before we do this, can I just kind of say and thank the author's report, Serena Brown. This is a really good report and it's very thorough, and I just wanted to kind of thank you for that and bringing that at this time. Who's presenting? I'm confused again. Councillor Reed, thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. As we know, that an update for the provision of water.
Sorry, Councillor Reed, can I just interrupt just for a second? Before Mr. Stokes goes, can we just wish you well in your retirement?
Yeah, here.
We might not get a chance to. Thank you for that. Sorry about that, Councillor Reed. Sorry.
Okay, not to worry. We'll start again, I think. So at the last meeting of this committee, indeed, which was my first attendance, it was requested that a report to consider the proposal to install 4 public water refill fountains in SK with costings. The costings have been provided for a 5-year period, and these include unit cost and direct installation, estimated water bill, projected staff resource costs for daily and weekly cleaning and intermittent gritting, presumably that's to do with the filters, and a contingency for a reactive maintenance. So I can confirm that the items that have been mentioned, there would be a cost of between 20 and 22,000, which seems quite eye-watering, but it is for 5 years. So we are looking about sustainability and longevity here. Currently, there's no costing has been allocated towards this initiative, other than a potential award of £6,000 for a unit in Stamford, and that in itself has current events, which I'll come back to in a moment. If the proposal is to be taken forward, there's a number of risks that we should need to carefully manage. Clearly, the most obvious one would be regular cleaning, Madam Chairman, and periods out of order could be potential from the risk of vandalism. Now, going back to Stamford, as I understand at the last Stamford Town Council meeting, and it's a shame that Councillor Wheeler isn't with us today. I understand that Stamford Town Council voted against this, and it's fortuitous that our Vice Chairman is Chair of Stamford, so she will be able to add further to that, albeit there is a offer put forward, a gesture put forward by a trust in Stamford to make a provision. So there's the introduction. I look forward to sort of the dialogue that comes out of the item that's agendaed and see where we get to. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Westropp.
Thank you. It's really rare for me to speak first, but I just wanted to say thank you to Serena, because this is really comprehensive. It's got everything in it. I 100% support the recommendation. I have to admit, I read down, and when I reached the word Legionella, I just thought there is no way I want to associate us with even a risk of it. And if there's free, but if we can use plastic bottles and refill them across the National Refill Scheme, I 100% support that. So that was all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Chairman. When I read this report, I thought that it contains a lot of obviously it contains the details of where to get them from and so on. I question the arithmetic, or at least the assumptions within it, because I don't know if somebody could give me an easy answer. The public toilets at Grantham and at Bourne, are they not maintained?
Councillor Reed.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. The ones at Bourne are maintained by Bourne Town Council. And the other ones that you mentioned, Grantham.
I know they used to be maintained, but I don't know if that's changed. I don't know if no, there used to be a staff member there, but I don't know if that's changed recently. You believe there is?
And Market Deeping, I believe, is now managed by the Market Deeping Town Council, and I don't know about Red Lion Square, whether that's an SKDC or a Stamford Town Council. So SKDC already have staff going to these sites every day. So I think the assumption that it says and did it say somewhere about a new member of staff? Yes, currently it's in paragraph 1.14.1 on page 24. Currently it is expected that a new staff member would need to be appointed to conduct these cleaning duties. Why, when we've got public toilets where there is already a risk of Legionella, or there will be a management of a Legionella risk, and already there is a staff member that is going to presumably clean toilets, polish taps, run Legionella tests and everything else, why would we need a new staff member to do this? I think that the current staff arrangements for those sites could easily accommodate wiping down twice a day a water cooler, it's not a water cooler, is it? What's it called? A bottle filler. And on top of that, it also, this is not just a decision about the cost, it's also about the message to our community. Councillor Wheeler will have said last time, I haven't watched the tape, but I'm sure she will have said about the number of plastic items which are thrown into the ocean every year, and the number of plastic items that go to landfill or to incineration each year, problems with waste and recycling and so on. It's not just virtue signalling, but even if it was, it would be a virtue worth signalling. And I mean, I saw one of these in Edinburgh, and it was right slap bang in the middle of one of the public squares, and it was saying, look, you community, you can easily do your bit by refilling your bottle rather than going and wasting more plastic. So it's worth doing. And when you look at the cost, I mean, I think the cost over the 4 years do look frightening because we're over 4 years. But the cost of each year is about £18,000 per unit. Sorry, for the 4 units over each year. Is that right? I've got 3.6 times 4, Richard will do the maths, but it doesn't even come to 20,000. It costs us £20,000 to have a new cabinet member. We've just lost a cabinet member, and if it was a choice between having 4 water filling stations or an extra cabinet member, I'd go for the water filling stations. I think that that's more use to the people of South Kesteven. And then when you also compare it, and I don't know which committee this is ever going to go to, but we're planning to build a statue. We're planning to take responsibility for a public statue in St Peter's Hill, and that's going to cost us in maintenance. And there's certainly a risk of vandalism there. But which committee is giving authorisation for paying for the maintenance and CCTV and everything else for that particular expenditure? So although the figures are written to look eye-watering, in actual fact, this is money well spent, because it's money that says that we as a council care about the environment, and we as a council care about the oceans, and we don't want plastic, and we want people to recycle, and we want people to reuse. And really, the fact that it's not one of the recommendations of the report is quite sad. And so I'd like to add in a recommendation that we at least go ahead with 1 or 2 of these sites to see what kind of environmental disaster they're going to cause. Because I can tell you, there won't be any. It will be, as the Victorians learned, we're getting back to what the Victorians are actually doing in terms of providing public water. It's a basic human right to be able to find clean water, and we shouldn't force people to go into Wetherspoons or anywhere else in order to do so. So I think that we should go ahead with them.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Westropp, did you want to come back?
Yeah, I did actually briefly, because it's a shame you hadn't watched the tape back as it happens, because we had a really nice discussion around reusing plastic bottles and it didn't necessarily need us to provide water dispensers in order to refill plastic bottles. And we had a really nice discussion about education and working with the community here already who have taps in order to refill bottles. So I appreciate you mentioned Wetherspoons, but actually there's quite a lot of other places where there's water already available. So we had a really good discussion about an education piece and doing something, but to look into this, to understand the costs before making any decisions. So that was why this came back, actually. So we were definitely not saying we want people to go and buy bottled water. We want people to reuse plastic bottles, and actually, rather than that, use the cooler, chiller bottles, actually, was what we were talking about. But rather than having to incur the expense, we were looking to try and educate people to go and ask for water where they already were. Just thought I'd add that.
Thank you. Councillor Diks?
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. I did listen to the tape back last night, because I was particularly interested in the previous item that we had to check what had been said. Again, I'd thank Councillor Baxter for, it was Councillor Baxter actually, not Amanda. Amanda actually spoke about it last time, but I think it was Councillor Baxter that put this on the agenda, as he did the previous item. And I've got to say, it'd be a pretty thin meeting today if these things weren't on the agenda. So I welcome that, and I welcome the discussion that we're having on it. I am disappointed with the report, particularly following the enthusiasm that we had from Councillor Wheeler, who presented it last time. And as Hannah, Councillor Westropp actually said, you know, we had a good discussion last time, and the bullet points that Amanda raised about the problem are indeed in the minutes, you know, about how many billion plastic bottles are brought across into the UK every year, and all the stuff. So the reason why we should be doing it, which is what Councillor Baxter was alluding to. I am disappointed, as Councillor Reed says, you know, they're eye-watering figures. I would actually question them, and I would ask, Councillor Wheeler actually brought figures in that debate and suggested figures, the costs, as the likely costs, and they were certainly a lot lower than these costs suggested here. And I was wondering if anybody had actually been back to Councillor Wheeler and asked, you know, where those figures came from, and if they were real, you know. And again, you know, it's in here, it's, oh, how are we going to pay for it? You know, even if we have one of these things, how are we going to pay for it? Well, you didn't ask that. The Cabinet didn't ask that when they voted to spend up to £100,000 for a party for a statue. And they voted on that twice. You know, nobody said, where's that money coming from? Okay, I understand. I'm moving on. But it was, you know, that was another time, Nikki, you know, Chairman. So Have we looked at the possibility of sponsorship? Have we looked at the possibility of, I know Stamford are interested in this and they've got this grant. What other grants are available? Possibly. Would other town and parishes possibly contribute to I appreciate Grantham hasn't got one, but my parish council may well, I don't know, want to contribute towards it. So there are ways of funding these things if we want to do it, if there is an ambition, and dare I say a political ambition. And we are talking about ambition here again, as we were in the last item, and lack of ambition, I've got to say. I hear what Councillor Westropp says about the Legionella, and it's a risk. And, she stopped when she saw Legionella mentioned. Well, other councils around the country have overcome that possible problem, and they don't have a problem. If you look at the Vale of Glamorgan, I looked it up last night. I just did a Google on councils who have installed, I just put in councils who have installed water fountains. The Vale of Glamorgan, I understand, was the first council in Europe to install free-to-use public bottle refill sites. And they put their first one in 2015. They now have 14 in the Vale of Glamorgan, right? Hackney in London, different to us, of course, a London borough, that's got 26 across Hackney. Now, I don't think they've got a Legionnaires problem there either. Winchester City Council, 3 years ago, they put their first one in. They've even put one in for dogs in Winchester, believe it or not. One on the floor that's just that it burbles up little water. They're planning to put in 26 of these water fountains. We're struggling to put one in here. A town, Bradford-on-Avon, this is a town, and admittedly not a district council, a town council, population of less than 10,000. I believe that they're putting in 3 of these things. Now, I don't know, and what I was looking up for was to see the costs, because I was staggered, as Councillor Reed said, by the cost that we're presenting. So I actually don't know what these councils, how much they've put in, and how much it has cost them. And that's what I was trying to find out. But somebody must know. And I just wonder if we shouldn't actually be going back and doing a bit more research on it to see if those costs that were presented today are perhaps a little bit on the high side. So that would be my proposal, actually, to sort of refer it back for let's have another look, really. That was what I would propose from the just now. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Reed. Councillor Diks, can you turn your mic off?
I'm just going to say it was...
Mike, please.
Oh, sorry, thank you. Thanks for allowing me to come back. Excuse me, Councillor. It was just some of all the, we seem to have thrown everything into this report negative that we could possibly throw in. And we've even got the costs, or the possible costs, the extra costs we'd have if we have a spell of cold weather and we'd have to grit the sites around. I mean, come on.
I actually think that's a valid point. But anyway, Councillor Reed.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Sort of a point of information and sort of exactly where we are. The heart tells me, like everybody else, that we can provide water point facilities. We should do, particularly with recycling in mind, as indeed I take my metal bottle, or my wife does, to fill airports and this, that and the other. However, Bourne Town Council, Stamford Town Council and Market Deeping Town Council have all had the public toilets property initiative by the District Council put to them individually to take them over. Now, I know that Bourne's in the final throes. I know that Stamford is in the final throws, and I know from the dialogue that the gentleman from the Deepings have mentioned that they're there as well. So actually, for the 3 towns, then this facility will be undertaken, or would be undertaken, by those 3 towns. clearly Grantham always has a struggle because it doesn't have a town council. So, and you know, that would have to probably go into the special expense area, which I understand is very near its limits anyway. But for this recommendation to be moved forward positively, I would have thought, under the guise that the toilets are being aligned as a facility as for each of the towns, then what we would need to do is actually organise a grant, provide a facility of a grant to support them in these individual locations. Because yes, okay, we can argue or decide or sort of debate where we are for the facility of these, whether it be to do with gritting, whether it to be with Legionellas or any other point. The fundamental fact is, where climate change is concerned, is that we want a way of providing water that members of the public can get, particularly those that are visiting, in each of our towns. So it would seem to me that what we need to do is we need to be looking at the way that we can facilitate a financial contribution to each of the town councils for them to be able to undertake them. And indeed, it is the town councils that pay for the cleaning. It's not the district council, because we've done it in Bourne now for a couple of years, for several years. And I'm sure that the service requirement for our public conveniences is changing that way across the district anyway. So that would be, I'd like to hope that that is a positive way forward. And I'd just like to check financially with, since we've got Richard Wiles with us, that we could actually facilitate that. It would need to be budgeted for, I understand that. And that would probably make it happen. You know, we could perhaps make it happen quicker than some of these frightening figures here as to how so much money could be needed to make this facility happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? Oh, Councillor Diks.
Yeah, sorry, Madam Chairman, I do pick up what you said. It's a valid point, of course, gritting. But my point simply on that was, is it an extra cost? Because you know, presumably we grit, or somebody grits outside public toilets now, and these things would be proposed in busy areas that presumably are already gritted if they need to be gritted by whoever. So I'm just questioning, is that really an extra cost? That's what I'm saying.
Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Chairman. My first question is about paragraph 1.14.1, which I think I asked earlier, but it might have got lost. Why would we expect a new staff member? So that's a question by itself. The second thing is that I think from what Councillor Reed has just said, I mean, obviously he's not a member of this committee, but he appears to have suggested a proposal which can make it happen a bit quicker. Now, whichever proposal it was,
sorry, Councillor Baxter.
Whichever proposal it was that Councillor Reed put forward, and I mean, he asked Mr. Wiles if he could comment. If it's a way that makes this move forward, then I'd happily propose it, but I'd need a form of words to propose. What I think he was saying was that we work in partnership with the town councils, and we offer some kind of financial encouragement for them to consider taking it on. I'm certainly supportive of that. And in Grantham, we wouldn't need that, obviously. In Grantham, we could just crack on, and whether or not it's paid for the benefit of all SK residents or just from the special expense area that's a question for Mr. Wiles rather than me. But yes, I'd certainly like to recommend that we go ahead with the scheme that Councillor Reed has suggested, and I'd certainly like to recommend that we pick at least one. And I don't mind if it's Grantham, Deepingbourne or Stamford. We should pick one that we want to crack on with and see how it works. I'm also interested, it's a rental agreement. If this ends in disaster and ends up being the magic porridge pot and floods the whole of the town or whatever, how easy is it to have them removed and to cancel the rental agreement? Are they in once and forever, or are they something? I mean, I can think of another initiative that I'm not going to name because it will bring back too many bitter memories, where the scheme could be implemented, and if it suffered disaster of vandalism or whatever, they could just be taken away. So what is the rental kind of situation? Thank you.
Can I just ask a couple of questions as well? Who am I kind of asking these to? Is it yourself, Councillor Reed, or do you want me to ask Serena? It is about costings, and is it going to be our unit? Is it a one-off purchase, and then we kind of are the costings there for maintenance and ongoing? But do we actually own the unit, or, as Councillor Baxter says, is it rented? And also, just another question I've got, I'm not quite sure who I'm directing this to, is that the money that's been raised for Stamford, I mean, my vice chair might be able to help here, from the Plastic Free Stamford group has been awarded 6,000 costs towards the installation of a unit. Is that correct? Yes. So is that going to run, so Stamford's out the equation for any financial implications from SK, or I'm a bit full of questions at the minute, sorry.
Well, the money that's come is earmarked from the Skells. Harry Skells was a resident of Stamford, and he left a large sum of money, and we're allowed to spend the interest. It's nothing to do with Stamford Town Council. We are just trustees of it. So it is earmarked for that. But if we would still, because our council voted against it, it was mainly the cost of everything. And these costings here, Amanda quoted lots of figures, but the figures that Amanda quoted, I'm sorry, were not feasible. I mean, £40 a year for water was one of them when she came to the council. Now, I'm sorry, I can't go with that. And it was the ongoing costs of it that we voted against, not the fountain. The fountain is fine, but maintaining it and running it was the issue, nothing else. So that's where the 6,000 comes from the Harry Skells Trust, which we are allowed to give out for the people of Stamford, support that affects everybody in Stamford, not small groups, everybody. So that's where the 6,000 comes in.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Reed?
Just for clarity in what you've asked, Serena wrote the report, as we can clearly see, she's the author of it. We are absent of a directorate at the moment because Gary Smith is no longer here, and it falls currently under my cabinet. So really the technicality questions we should give Serena the opportunity of answering. And I would ask again if we could have an answer from Richard Wiles as to the sustainability suggestion I put forward as a way forward to actually make this happen. Thank you.
Of course. Can I come to Richard first, please?
Yeah, I was just seeking clarification from Councillor Reed as to whether we're talking about a charge to the special expense area, or are we talking about a grant payment to the town council? And I think Councillor Reed's leaning towards some notional grant contribution to the respective town council. Of course, that doesn't work in Grantham in the absence of a town council, but it will work in the other locations. So I suppose the question then is, what is that figure, and how do we arrive at that figure in the context of what Serena will tell us around the costings? And also in terms of the budget line, clearly this isn't in the budget at the moment. So there'd have to be some further work about how the monies could be allocated or reprioritised from other headings and get the appropriate approvals to move monies around. Or alternatively, it becomes an April 23 proposal and it gets built into the budget as we go into the autumn period and thereafter becomes a contribution from that point. So there are a number of options and choices. Of course, you also know in terms of special expense areas, there's work around removing those. We've removed Deepins, Bourne removes its from April this year, and then Stamford from April 23. So the direction of travel is to shift those away, but we are left with the Grantham. So legitimately, there could be a charge into the Grantham special expense area, and as an alternative, going to the town councils at the other locations. So there are a number of options that we could explore, but I think we're waiting to see what that number could be.
Thank you for that. Serena.
Thank you, Chair. So regarding the question around rental and one-off costs, we did contact suppliers and ask for both. So we do have one-off costs as well as the rental costs. It's not included within the report because it became very unwieldy, but I'd be happy to share that alongside the rental costs that were provided if of interest. The reason that rental costs were provided within the report is that it gives the council greater protection because a maintenance contract is already included. And if something happens to the water fountain, which means it's no longer operational, then it gives the council greater protection if it needs to be removed and then replaced rather than having already paid for that fountain upfront. So that was the rationale there. There were some difference in cost, but overall rental, I believe, was cheaper for a number of the options. And again, that's why it was included. I'm afraid I've forgotten if there were any other follow-up questions outside of the rental question.
Thank you for the information. The first one is, if it's rented, is there a kind of early exit clause? If it caused a load of trouble, is it possible to cancel the rent after 1 or 2 years rather than waiting the whole 4 years? And the other question which remains unanswered is, why would we need a new staff member?
Thank you, Councillor Baxter. I'm not able to say currently about the rental contract. We did contact 5 different suppliers and all of them will have different terms and conditions for the rental. And at this stage, we didn't explore it in that level of detail. So I expect that if this is to progress, that will be something that we would explore at the next stage, obviously in detail, and seek some legal advice for that as well. Regarding the question about new staff member, we've already discussed in this committee around the responsibilities, and that sits with some of the town councils in some of the locations. So we understand this is a requirement we would expect the town council to deliver on our behalf. Where there are staff employed by SKDC currently, their duties are already at capacity. They're stretched very, very thin. They're already expected to cover a number of different locations. And also currently a number of the staff employed by the council don't have driving licenses, so wouldn't be able to just easily travel to other areas of the district outside of where they're directly employed. So it's something for us to explore, but I wanted to include it as a risk that we might not be able to just simply add it to the current work rota of existing staff. We would need to explore that in some further detail. Thank you.
So, Chairman, if I might come back, I accept that someone travelling around, for me, it would be daft in the first place to expect one person to be travelling around the district doing all 4 just to do water fountains. That would not meet our sustainability aspirations. However, I don't think the travel costs of travelling from the Grantham toilets to the water fountain just outside the Grantham toilets are not going to be prohibitive. And so I think that's a red herring, really. But I'm not sure where we've got to now, so I appreciate the answers. Thank you very much. I still would like to say that we should do our best to go ahead with one of these schemes. I mean, Stamford sounds the easiest in that the town already has a pledge of £6,000, which would meet the installation cost and the first year's running cost, if it's anything like as much as is down on this piece of paper. And I would suggest it would probably be enough for the first 2 years. If after 2 years it turns out to be a white elephant, then all right, we've tried and failed. But better to try and fail than to just not try anything because COVID, Brexit, budget, whatever. And so that if you need that as a proposal, I'll happily make that.
I just need a bit of advice because we've already got a recommendation here. So this is where I get a bit woolly, so excuse me.
Mine, I think the one you're alluding to was it mine, was to refer it back, for further information. If it's helpful, I'm happy to withdraw. I don't think it was seconded, I'm not sure, but I'm happy for.
We have got a recommendation on the front, which I still want.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Oh, forgive me.
I still think we should still encourage to be part of this national refill scheme as well. I think it shouldn't be one or the other. I think, that this is a national thing. You download the app, you see where it is, and you go in and they refill your drink bottles. I think that's also very valid, as well as maybe looking to come back with more information and more discussions with the town councils. And I always get confused, the town councils, and of course, poor little lonely Grantham, who hasn't got anything, to kind of move this forward as well. But I don't want to lose sight that, this scheme's a very good scheme and it's on a national level, and, and we need to acknowledge that as well. So I just need to kind of, follow rules and process and stuff.
If I may, Chairman, I'd happily recommend recommendation 1. I don't think there's any problem with that whatsoever. I think it's obvious, it's straightforward, and please enable.
I think I might have just recommended that, but carry on.
Okay, so I'd like to add a recommendation, and I speak hesitantly because I'd welcome refinements. I'd like to add a recommendation that the committee recommend to Cabinet or to the decision maker, the committee recommend that the council supports a scheme to install a water refill station in at least one town. I'm looking at Councillor Johnson when I say probably Stamford.
Or do we open it up where we say it council supports and discusses with the 4 towns, so that if Stamford are not happy or willing or able to, that we're not just earmarked it to one, and that someone else might born maybe more.
So
sorry, am I confusing? I don't want to overstep.
I'm sure that it'll look smooth in the minutes, but we're if we go into all 4 town councils, we know that Stamford have already got £6,000 in the kitty. If we go into the other 3 areas, because they're not councils, but to the other 3 situations, what are we actually offering? If we're going to Market Deeping and saying, right, we've given you these toilets, now also we think it would be a good idea if you did this water fountain thing, then they will obviously turn around and say, okay, who's going to pay for it? I think Councillor Reed mentioned this grant scheme, which I'm fully behind, unless we have to wait until April 2026 to crack on with it because of a budget thing. So
my thing is, if we have a discussion, the other areas may come back and say, well, actually, that's a really good idea. We've not thought about it. We'll have a certain amount of money if you can. And don't forget, we do as a committee have some money available. We wouldn't be able to fund all 4. But, if that's what the committee decides, we could use our next year's, we've already spent this year's, going into the next year, some money towards this. So I just think, let's not cut off all discussions. I mean, they all may come back and say no, and then that's a different conversation that us as a committee would have to have again. Richard, did you want to come in?
I did, but I noticed Councillor Johnson are there.
Yeah.
Councillor Johnson.
Well, I haven't got a problem with the water fountain in Stamford, not at all, and I don't think the council has. We have the 6,000. Robert mentioned funding. Nicholas just mentioned funding. So we could do Stamford with the funding that's available and do it reasonably quickly so that we've got a year to see how it works out and then roll it out in the rest of the district if that's good. So that's what I think. But I do think these figures are quite a little bit over the top maybe, but I do think they are quite reasonable because the maintenance is a suck it and see, isn't it? You don't know whether they're going to get vandalised, you don't know whether the frost's going to do it or what. So yeah, I would like to see one in Stamford, do it quickly for the year and then roll it out with the rest of the district if it's any good. With the funding that Robert's mentioned and the funding here, then it'll be cost neutral virtually to Stamford for at least a year.
Yeah, I think that's a very good recommendation if we can kind of jot that down. Can we take?
Certainly, I'd like to second that as a recommendation.
Can I have a seconder from mine that's here?
I will.
Are we taking this as one recommendation? Yeah. We'll take it as one, I think. I think we'll take what Gloria's just proposed and recommended. Oh,
I just want to be careful because I don't think Councillor Reed, I don't want to misquote Councillor Reed, he didn't say there was money available, he said to explore. So I think in terms of reputation, we just need to be careful about the language, about exploring with town councils the possibility of, because we've said there's no budget, there's no allocation for this. And to be fair, we've gone through a scrutiny process and this was never raised. We've been through council last week, this was never raised. There's been opportunities to put funding in place. We haven't done that and we understand why, but we don't want to be committing something because town council, first thing they're going to say is how much, and is it one-off, is it annual, is it a contribution, is it full cost? And I don't think we're yet in that space where we can definitively give a position. So I think it is working alongside the councils to understand the position, to bring something else back. And in the meantime, Serena can do some further work about some more specific funding issues or allocations, and then we can make a more informed decision. I just don't want to reputationally harm ourselves by leading some town councils down a path that we may not then be able to fulfil at the end of it.
I understand that, so I will change it a little bit to say we will explore the feasibility of doing Stamford with the funding that we can get that's available.
Councillor Baxter.
So for tidiness, what I think between you and Councillor Johnson, what I think you've proposed is number one, as is on the sheet. Number two, that we work with, or we aim to work with Stamford Town Council towards installing a fountain there. No, we're not saying that? I thought we were working with them to install a water fountain.
Yeah, but the one thing I do want to stress, we haven't got the funding to fit it. We have not got it. We've got £6,000. That is all. The toilets hopefully are going to come into our domain, but that's not right away. So we've got no funding. So we cannot put it in without more or less total funding. That's what I'm trying to say. We've only got £6,000 towards it. So we haven't got the money to maintain it for the year.
As I understand it, Chairman, we've got, if it's £6,000, then according to the figures in front of us, that's enough to install it and to run it for at least a year. And I don't know when the toilets come into the hands of Stamford Town Council, whether it's April this year or April next year. But Stamford have got the head start because they've got £6,000, which according to these figures is enough to install it and run it for a year at least. And I think if we were working, I think what our recommendation is to say is to work with the councils. And I was going to say that point 3 would be to work with the other councils towards the budget and so on. But we need to recognise that Stamford is
sorry, Councillor Baxter, if I can come in. Stamford's a head start from the others, but I think it's unfair of us to expect Councillor Johnson to speak on behalf of the whole of Stamford Town Council about the monetary value. I think, yes, let's encourage them to go for the first one, and hopefully that the money is there. But I do think we can't, as a committee, enforce that on a different kind of authority. So yes, I think we've got to word this very carefully, that yes, Stamford has some money sat there, and if they deem that it's not enough to do it, install it and run it for a year or however, then that is their decision. That's not for us to kind of impose on them. So yes, we need to word this very carefully. I think recommendation 1 is as it stands, and then I think we should take the lead from Councillor Johnson, who does kind of sit on both. If she's saying that that money's not there for the whole thing that they've kind of researched, you know, that is their decision. That's not for us to kind of overrule that. So let's just take a minute and let's just get this worded really correctly so that we can support and move this kind of agenda item forward, because I think we're all in agreement that we want to see this, and we want to see this especially in one area. So let's just pause just for a second and let's word it wisely.
I will bring it to Town Council on the 21st of March. I will put it as an item on the agenda. When it was first brought to Stamford, the £6,000 wasn't enough to install the unit. Now we're saying £2,000 is enough to install one unit. That needs to be investigated, because the 6,000 was not enough to do it. I can't remember the end figure, so we need to really look at it. I will bring it back to the council on the 21st of March and see what becomes of that.
Councillor Reed, did you want to?
Yeah, well, as a point of information to start with, and then to try and be helpful, okay, by suggestion. Point of information to start with is that the negotiations with Stamford Town Council for the toilets there to change from District Council to Stamford hasn't yet happened. The negotiations are in process, but they haven't yet happened. Secondly, the Bourne ones are the negotiation there is probably further advanced and probably will happen for next year for April. And the ones at Market Deeping are also at an advanced stage. Of course, we understand that Grantham is quite separate. Would it not be better for your committee to consider putting a recommendation forward to exploring grant status for each of the 4, so that then whatever deliberations happen through Stamford, for Stamford Town Council, and for the others, that initiative can go forward to each, and that way all 4 tranches, all 4 towns can independently look at the way that they could expedite this facility, because that's what everybody's wanting. And I would have thought that if you committee members were to construe the recommendation along that lines, then some grant funding could be looked into further. And that would in turn turn into could be a reasonably quick cabinet decision to support the grant funding, if it can be channeled, as the directorate says, from within the parameters of this year's budgets. And I'm sure for a constructive way forward, that could be engineered, but I think it needs to come from your committee as a recommendation for grant funding to be sought, and it to be channeled through the 4 town councils. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Reed. So we've got a recommendation here that Amy's captured lovely. I'm going to let her read it to us.
Okay, so we've got that the council works to explore grant funding for each of the four each of the four towns in South Kesteven to expedite the facility of installing water refill fountains. Does that make sense?
I second that.
Oh. Councillor
I
Diks.
second that.
You proposed that probably. It wouldn't be Amy that proposes it.
Councillor Diks.
Yeah, no, I was pressing the wrong button. I was pressing to vote for. I'm on the wrong button. It was just on this sort of funding, and I know we've had a big debate, a very good debate, I think, on this, and I think we're getting to a consensus. It was just longer term, you know, it's the sort of thing, just as people now, when they die in their wills, they put in, you know, a park bench, you know, and we've had them, I'm sure, you know, others have. It's the sort of thing, it'd be a great legacy, wouldn't it? That some, you know, to put, and that's why I suggested United Charities as a, you know, which was money. It sounds like the Harry Sells Wells or whatever it is thing. You know, it's that same sort of thing. It's legacy. So I'm sure, you know, longer term, you know, we could actually get some sponsorship or funding for these things. Particularly if, you know, somebody had a little name on it that said in memory of Councillor Manterfield, for example.
Thank you. I don't intend to go anywhere yet, but thank you for that. Right, so bringing this back to the recommendations. So we've got the one that Gloria's proposed. Have we got a seconder for that part?
Yeah, yes, I'd like to second it.
Okay.
Although when you said it to, did you say explore grant funding? Maybe it's explore funding options. The reason I say that is because in Grantham, High Street Fund or whatever it's called, High Street. I would have thought that's exactly the sort of thing that we would future High Street Fund. That's the sort of thing that they should be interested in. And secondly, if there is a sponsor or a benefactor or whatever else, then that should be true. So I think the original idea was for the grant funding to be coming from SKDC, and I'd certainly welcome that. I think the motion makes it sound a little bit like we're expecting the Heritage Lottery or someone to bring it forward. So that's why I say funding options, perhaps. But
funding options including.
I think, sorry, Mr. Chairman, I think that's reasonable because
Yeah,
I think it's implied grant funding would be available, but there are a number of options available. So
Yeah, explore all funding availability. Yeah, no.
Would you like me to read it out?
Yes, please.
Okay, so that the council works to explore funding options for each of the four towns in South Kesteven to expedite the facility of water refill stations.
Yes, thank you. Right, so we've got a proposer and a seconder for both areas because I still think we need to include number one. So are we happy to vote? Right, all those for? Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for the time spent on that. You know, I think that's really a really good agenda item and a way forward. Thank you. So we'll move on to agenda item 8, which is just a verbal update on climate change. If I can hand you over to Serena, please.
Thank you, Chair. So the committee requested in the last session that we include just a verbal update on climate change for March. So I'm happy to share an overview of a couple of different projects that we've been focusing on from a climate change point of view. So councillors may have noticed in the budget preparations, which were discussed at council last Thursday, there was a line in there regarding a grant funding allocation for an energy efficiency scheme. This is the Sustainable Warmth Competition, and it's been allocated to a large number of councils across the country. South Kesteven has been allocated up to a maximum of 1.4 million to oversee a programme of energy efficiency upgrades targeted predominantly beyond the council's housing stock to own, occupier and private rented sector properties with poor energy efficiency. Currently, the intention is to deliver the project as a partnership with 3 other councils, City of Lincoln, West Lindsey and North Kesteven councils, which will attract some savings as well in terms of pulling our money together. We will be developing that project in the coming months, and happy to deliver a further update on that as things progress. We have already shared with the committee in the previous session an update on tree planting. I'm happy to update regarding the local authority Treescapes Fund, which is being managed by Lincolnshire County Council. 17 town and parish councils in South Kesteven registered interest for that, as well as SKDC submitting a number of proposed sites for up to 85 trees to be planted within our remit. The SKDC sites have now been completed, and those new trees will be added to the council's tree register. We've also been in discussions with Lincolnshire County Council regarding the Trees Call to Action Fund as a consortium bid to maximise tree planting opportunities. An expression of interest has been submitted to the fund on behalf of Lincolnshire, and we are waiting a decision on the outcome of that funding. We have also been in discussion with the Woodland Trust regarding their emergency tree funding opportunity, which was raised in the session in September. An application for that funding was submitted late last year, and we are expecting a decision on that funding for the beginning of the next financial year. An update on the Climate Action Group. So as a number of members of this committee will be aware, an interim meeting of the Climate Action Group was held on the 15th of February, which considered a full council motion to consider integration of climate change into planning decisions. That considered several proposals and put forward several recommendations, which were again discussed at full council last Thursday. The next meeting of the Climate Action Group will consider an update on engagement of the business community, as well as further opportunities to reduce South Kesteven's carbon footprint. A final point just on carbon reporting. We will begin reviewing the council's carbon emissions from this April onwards. There is always a slight lag in terms of collection of data as part of our annual carbon reporting. Last year, obviously saw a reduction of emissions of 25%, which is a very large amount, but due in large part to building lockdowns. So I don't believe that the reductions will be of the same scale this year, but I do still believe there will be a reduction compared to our baseline year. So we will be bringing an update as soon as we can to this committee on the carbon reporting for that. That's all of the updates I've got for today, but I'm happy to take any questions any of the councillors have today. Thank you.
Thank you, Serena. Any questions for Serena? Councillor Diks.
Thanks, Madam Chairman, and thank you, Serena, for the report, for the update. I just wondered on the grant that we're looking for. I think you said 1.4 million we're hoping for in the sort of round, and it was mainly, I think you said, for upgrading our own housing stock, and we're working with City of Lincoln, West Lindsey of North Kesteven. I just wonder, is that a match funding scheme? Because I'm aware that when we had to send back the £1 million last year that we weren't able to sort of meet the criteria on and etc. That was actually a grant. I understood at the time that future grants from the government were going to be match funding. So I just wonder if you could and if you could say a little bit more, if you're able to, on what that might achieve. Obviously, I'm aware, as others are, that we've still got some of our housing stock on solid fuel, and I wondered if that's if it's going to help solve that problem. And the final thing I'd just say on you mentioned the Climate Change Action Group meeting that we had on the 15th of February to prepare a motion to council on a better focus on climate change when looking at planning applications. I don't want to rehearse it, but I'd just say thank you to all members who supported that motion last week. I think it was unanimous by the council, and what I'm saying is, there was cross-party working on it to get there. I particularly thank Nick Robbins, Councillor Nick Robbins, and the planning Deputy Director Emma Whitaker for their input in sort of coming up with something that's workable, hopefully. Thank you.
Thank you, Serena.
Thank you, Councillor. So in regards to this funding, the scope is completely different. It's targeted at firstly domestic properties, and secondly properties which are not social housing or controlled by housing associations. So the scope of the grant funding is towards owner occupied properties and those in the private rented sector. So the council is not, I believe there is a small capacity to direct up to a maximum of 10% of the funding to social housing, but that's capped. So 90% of the funding has to be delivered outside of social housing. The main focus of the scheme will be to those tenure types. So in effect, the council is delivering, sort of overseeing a programme, but not delivering in our own council stock by and large. Secondly, on the match funding point, you mentioned the previous funding, the public sector decarb scheme, which was targeted at public buildings and not domestic buildings. I understand that's still the case regarding match funding. There is an expectation there. For this scheme, there is no expectation of any local authority to contribute match funding. The majority of local authorities have been made aware of this scheme and will be making use of their own allocation. South Coast Stephen are not alone in having been allocated this. Each of the Lincolnshire districts have, and I believe at least all of the districts and councils across the Midlands. This is a national scheme. It's up to a maximum of 1.4 million, depending on how many properties we're able to deliver, again, within a very optimistic and tight timescale to March 2023. So the more properties that we are able through our appointed contractor to upgrade, the more of that budget will obviously be spent. So that's why I say up to a maximum of, rather than it's not a budget that we have put in ourselves. Regarding the scope of energy efficiency, it depends. There's two different streams. One is directed at off-gas properties, and they'll be able to claim a higher level of grant funding, for example, for air source heat pump upgrades or other heating upgrades. Other properties which already have a gas connection, it will probably be directed more towards insulation upgrades and air tightness. Every upgrade obviously will have a good impact on carbon emissions and help to reduce carbon emissions, as well as tackling fuel poverty. But the number of properties that will be tackled is going to be quite modest, obviously, compared to the whole housing stock of the district, and particularly within a 1-year time frame. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Serena. That's really good. Councillor Reed, did you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you. Just for information, really. I mean, this budget offer has come in, this grant offer has come in to very late stage for next year's budgets. And it is very largely an in and out sort of funding situation. However, I would like to confirm the 10% for the housing revenue account to be able to facilitate. We are aware of it, and we are intending to make the best use of it that we possibly can as well. It is as it is. Came in late. We've managed to facilitate it within the next financial year, which is important to note. There we go with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Whittington, did you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks. I was just going to say, I think as Serena said, I think we're happy to bring update reports back during the next year, just to inform the committee as to the progress on this, because obviously, as Serena said, it's up to 1.4 million. So it's really up to us to identify those properties and try to maximise our usage of the fund. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments or anything? No? Lovely. Then we'll move on to agenda item. Thank you, Serena, for that. Agenda item 9, the work programme. So we are bringing the progress on the depot next time in May. I'd quite like to change the verbal update, Serena, just to a little kind of written report, if that's all right. Nothing too in depth, nothing more than what you kind of present verbally, but I just think it's quite nice to have it written, and as it's a regular thing, it kind of gives us the report in writing if everyone's happy with that. Thank you. So obviously climate update will continue on because I think that's really important. Councillor Baxter.
Thank you. Is it possible to put in the work programme sometime soon an update on the Environment Act and its impact on the local authority, especially in light of all the to-ins and fro-ins about the food waste scheme last week? Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Councillor Diks.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chairman. I did mention, I think it was in part within the agenda, the last item, that I would like electric charging points to be on the work programme, but it hasn't been picked up. And with a particular aspect, it was in light of the comments that we had at the last meeting that that they aren't the ones we've installed are not being heavily used currently, and it's kind of, why not? You know, are we getting something wrong, or what's the charging? So I do want to look at the charging. I did, as I did say at the last minute, it was in light of an experience where someone told me that they were going to charge up an electric car and told me about, oh, this point charges X amount, and the one at Tesco's is this amount, and you know, and then you compare it with plugging it into your own electricity supply, and it, you know, it's a bit of a fault. And I'd just sort of like to look at, you know, is there anything more we can do? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Sorry, I think that's my oversight. Yes, that was mentioned before. I'm sorry about that. That's not on. So thank you. Councillor Whittington.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chairman. I'm pleased Councillor Baxter raised an update on the Environment Act of 2021, because I was actually going to suggest that we do need to bring updates back to the committee on this, because obviously the Environment Act has identified that going forward a whole number of different waste streams will need to be sort of collected and separately. It's not just food waste, it's paper and card, and potentially also green waste as well. So I'll speak to the team, to Anne-Marie's team, and see when we can get a report back on that. Obviously, potentially as well as that, there may be individual papers that may need to come to this committee on our plans for rolling out the paper and card scheme and whatever going forward. If it's helpful, Madam Chairman, as well, at the Lincolnshire Waste Partnership meeting last Thursday morning, we did commit to take to the Lincolnshire Waste Partnership a report on the food waste scheme trial, to sort of feed back to them lessons that we learned from it and whatever. I'd be more than willing to bring the same paper back to this committee when it's ready, so that this committee can see the same report that we will be submitting to the Lincolnshire Waste Partnership. So potentially, if you consider that's okay, it can be scheduled in the work programme. Thank you.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you, Councillor Whittington. Yeah, we'd be really interested in hearing that report. Thank you. Councillor Reed, did you want to come in?
Thank you. Yes. Quite rightly, I was going to ask if car charging points could be put on the forward agenda. We did speak about them at the last meeting. We did talk about the feasibility of actually doubling the capacity, and I've had dialogue with Amanda Wheeler to that effect. I have worked with Gary Smith as to whether we could attract grant funding again, like we did achieve successfully last time. And I'd like it minuted and confirmed that that has been made available. However, there's two further considerations, one an exceedingly important one, and that's grid capacity. And that is what is actually stopping us at the moment in pursuing that. And to partly help furnish the inquiry firm Councillor Diks, is the ones that we've got are not relatively, they're slow charging units, which are, and what we are and the reason that grid capacity comes up is that what we need to do for the next installation batch is to have fast charging ones, and of course that makes the grid capacity issue. So that's where we are with car charging points at this moment in time. So and I did bring it up in the budget round. Richard Wiles would confirm that there is within contingency facility for us to actually do the installation, but we can't do it without any extra power, and we can't do it, and it wouldn't be sensible, I don't think, to duplicate the slow charging point of it. As a point of interest, quite separately, I was contacted by Ray Wootton with his county council hat on, as to say that the ones that we have installed are very much near the exits to our car parks, and in actual fact they are making the situation for our disabled car parkers more difficult. So if we do have or we're able to provide a further facility, then that point is noted, and I said that I would take it on board. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other items to be added onto the work plan? No? Then that's good. Thank you for them. Then I've got no further. Oh, Councillor Mark Whitton just got in then.
Thank you. I've actually got something on any other business, because I've got an update on the query that Councillor Diks raised about recycling plants around Stamford.
Okay.
If that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
The team have been in contact with LCC because obviously the household waste centres come under the jurisdiction of the county. I've had a reply back that at the moment LCC have got no plans to put a household waste recycling centre in Stamford because it is within 12 miles radius of Bourne. So that is the official back on that. If I'm happy, if people are happy to receive that as a verbal update. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you for that, Councillor Whitton. So if we've got no further business, I haven't as chair.
Can I just answer? Mark, they looked at it round Stamford for a number of years, having a recycling, and there is nowhere to put one, even if they wanted one in Stamford. And especially now they're building all them houses, because they were some of the sites that they looked at. So there'll never be one in Stamford at this moment in time.
Thank you for that. So as agenda item 10, I'll try again. I haven't got any other further business, so I would like to draw the meeting to a close. Thank you very much for your time and your contributions, everyone. Thank you very much.